All right, we are live. It is Thursday, December 4th, 2014. We're here to do a quick status update on Backdrop CMS, where we are, where we're going, all that good stuff. Backdrop CMS is a content management system specifically intended for small to medium-sized business, nonprofits, and people who are particularly concerned about the cost, but still need a very comprehensive content management system for their websites. Our goals are to create a Drupal 8 comparable system on an architecture more like that of Drupal 7. Backdrop is a fork of the Drupal project. While creating this product, we're going to be... All right, we are live. It is Thursday, December 4th. We're here to do a quick status update on Backdrop CMS, where we are, where we're going, all the...
Sorry.
It's okay. All right, looks fine over here. We're watching live and participating at the same time. Wow, I sound funny on a speaker. Okay, anyway, where were we? All right, so our goals. We're going to be fixing bugs. Those are bugs that exist in Drupal 7 and haven't been fixed. Bugs that existed in Backdrop only and need to be fixed, and bugs that were in Drupal 8 and have already been fixed, as well as bugs that we may have introduced along the way. We're going to be fixing all the bugs. We're also, all the bugs. We're also going to be simplifying existing systems as much as possible. So in Backdrop land, we'd like to keep our APIs as compatible with Drupal 7 as possible, but where we can, we'd like to simplify those systems. So removing functionality that not everybody's using, removing features that only benefit less than, the majority of people running the site. So particularly the 1%, but anywhere in that 20%, those features might also be on the chopping block. And we're also going to be able to add new features. So it's not just Drupal 7 minus a bunch of stuff, it's also Drupal 7 plus a bunch of stuff. So all of the new features that people are really itching to get their hands on, we're going to be baking those in too. So we're going to talk about a few of those later, but we are not afraid to add new things, not only in new major releases, but also in minor releases. So when is Backdrop going to be released? Well, it is now fall of 2014, which is when we promised the Backdrop will be out, and so we are going to issue a pre-release here in the next 2 weeks, and that will mean that anyone who wants to give Backdrop a try will be able to download it, install it, run it, build a site, see what you think, take a look at the code, try and import some modules, let us know how it goes. It'll be ready in 2 weeks, which is great. But Backdrop 1.0.0 is going to be released on January 15th, 2015. So we'll hopefully skip the holidays, and then after everyone has recovered and is no longer hungover from New Year's, they'll be able to download and install Backdrop, set up real sites, and start building for real. So we're very excited about this. We have a firm date. We're going to stick to it. Anything we don't get done by then, we'll not get into Backdrop 1.0.0. If it's a bug fix, we can add it later. If it's a new feature, we might be able to add it later. If it's an API change, it's cut until Backdrop 2. So we're also hoping to continue with further releases on a regular basis, so probably quarterly. We'll come out with minor versions, which will contain new features. We'll decide which goes into which feature and help prioritize what gets done when. And hopefully that'll allow us to continue to innovate and add new things going forward, not have to wait until the next release to get new features in. So, progress report. Where are we now? We have some very exciting updates since our last meeting. Nate, do you want to give us an update on configuration management?
Yeah, gladly. So we tweeted it out what happened, but since we didn't have our meeting last week because it was Thanksgiving, we'll reiterate it here. We completely finished configuration management conversions now. There's nothing left. There's no more. There's not a single variable. There's not a single subsystem that is not CMI'd at this point. So it's very exciting. We wrapped it all up. The very last thing was text formats. Oh, actually, the mail system variable is the very last thing. But every single system is now CMI converted that we plan on having for the 1.0.0 release, which is super exciting. There's some things in the future that perhaps we'll eventually get to them, but for the 1.0.0 release, we are where we want to be. There's a new issue I made for backdrop 2.x, which is kind of kind of funny to start thinking about the next version of backdrop. But issue 435 is the CMI and backdrop 2.x meta issue that includes all the follow-ups that we'd like to get eventually, and that includes things like translation config or config translation. We don't have any centralized way of translating. Basically, the way config works in backdrop is the same way that variables worked in 777, where if you need to translate something, you retrieve the variable first and then you translate it afterwards. So basically, just running it through locale module. Right now, the system table still exists for compatibility and for simplicity. So enabling and disabling modules will be backdrop 2.0. Deleting fields is currently not supported, and menu links are still in the database because they're content, because they're tied to nodes right now. So those are four like kind of major things that we can look forward to in the future. But for now, in Backdrop 1.0, it's just going to be like a drastic improvement over features. But I mean, it's not quite as ambitious as Drupal 8, which of course is one of the reasons why Drupal 8 is still being delayed, because of some of these problems that we've kind of sidestepped for the time being, and we'll try to solve them in 2.0.
Yay! Okay, so CMI was our last major release blocker for Backdrop 1. So getting all of that stuff wrapped up is super important. That means that we are now in we could release it any day if we wanted to zone, and so we're scrambling to get our last most important fixes in before then. Other things that we have done recently is our blocks and layouts initiative. We have replaced the old block system and page template from Drupal 7 with a fancier version that's more like panels, with a whole new revamped user interface. So if you're afraid of panels because you don't like the user interface, don't worry about that. We wrote a new user interface for Backdrop. That's also in. We've got a list of minor improvements. There's some follow-up tests. There's a couple of little bugs. There's a couple of user interface improvements, stuff like that. So if you're really excited and want to help us get some of those changes in very soon, that might be a good place to jump in. Some of those are fairly straightforward. Some of them are a little bit more complicated. Other things we're also working on, we've included the views module in core. This was kind of a no-brainer for both Backdrop and Drupal 8, where views is the #1 downloaded contrib module for Drupal 7, and so it made sense to put it directly in core. We've got it in core, it's saving the config, everything is working really well, but there are a bunch of listings in core that could be using views instead of their own custom listings. And that would be great for us because then the view would just be a config file and there would be less code to maintain. And we've got a couple of people working on building those views for us, but we need upgrade paths in order to actually put those pull requests into core. So I think there might be one or two examples of how you can actually do that, but those aren't done yet. So if someone wants to wrap those up in the next few weeks, that might also be a good place to pitch in. And those were our 3 major features, and it looks like we're totally on track with being able to release having all of those in core. That was kind of what we were aiming for Backdrop 1, and we've achieved that. There's obviously a little cleanup around all of those things that we could use, but for the most part, we're totally in good shape. So we've got some other stuff that we're working on too. We've got a handful of security issues that have been fixed in Drupal 7 and fixed in Drupal 8. We need to get either those same fixes or equivalent fixes into Backdrop. Most of those have been fixed. I think we have 2 security issues left. I think we checked on one of those last week and it turned out not to be relevant to us because 10 out of 12, because it applied to modules we've removed from core. So yay for that. And then we also have a list of issues that have been fixed in Drupal 7, mostly bug fixes, documentation changes, user interface updates that have not yet been fixed in Backdrop. So these just need to be ported over. I think the last time I was working on Crossports, I got all of the old ones done. So now we're just looking at things that were in Drupal 7.3.3. I think that's the only issue left of what needs to be ported over. And it looks like there are maybe about 80 of those. And those usually go pretty quickly because the patches from Drupal 7 usually apply pretty cleanly to Backdrop. So if we had someone to work on those, that would also be great. I don't think these are necessarily release blockers since Drupal 7 is out without them, but it would be a little bit embarrassing to be behind where Drupal 7 was. So if we had someone who wanted to help with those, that might be a good place to jump in as well. We also have a list of backports that we're working on from Drupal 8. I don't think these are mission critical, but if someone wanted to help us clean up our JavaScript syntax, there's a meta issue for that. And I think there are 3 HTML5 elements that Drupal 8 has that we don't yet have. There's a list of other ones that were introduced into Drupal 8 that we've specifically decided not to include because they introduced some critical bugs. So for those, we've got them on the list for Backdrop 2. We'll see what happens with with those if Drupal 8 can figure them out. If anyone wants to, feels really passionate about those for Backdrop and wants to solve the problem for us, then we can contribute that back to Drupal 8 too. But we're tabling them for now just because they look tricky. We've got a bunch of minor things we're also working on in Backdrop. We have a handful of design-related tasks that we have moved off into a specific design-focused meeting. And those include things like new branding for the admin theme and a new admin or a new front theme for the Backdrop flagship website. We've got progress happening in all of those areas, but we do have another meeting where we specifically talk about design stuff too. So if anyone is super interested in design and you hear about it in this meeting, our other meeting is usually at 12 o'clock every other Thursday. So it's a fortnightly meeting rather than a weekly meeting. Other things we're working on, we're trying to clean up the theme system a little bit. Obviously, we don't have very much time left, but we are working on removing the process layer, and there's a bunch of little teeny tiny cleanups like template consolidation that have already been done. So hopefully we'll get that a little bit closer before we release. User experience improvements. We won't have very much more that's going to go in before we release 1.0, but we are able to improve user interface going forward. So for example, we know that the new layouts module has some serious user interface problems, but those are all changes that are easily done with CSS and can happen after the 1.0 release without breaking any APIs or any other issues associated with it. So we are establishing some human interface guidelines that'll help us figure out how interfaces in Backdrop should respond under which circumstances, and that'll help us figure out how to do kind of a holistic approach to making the user interface in Backdrop much better. So again, not a release blocker, something we can definitely improve a lot between Backdrop 1 and Backdrop 2. And we will continue to do that. And we can also add new features, things like a rich text editor, something we feel rather strongly about over here in Backdrop land. That's also something we can add after 1.0 that's not necessarily going to be a API break, so new features added after the fact will also greatly improve our user experience. We've got a handful of issues that just involve reviewing stuff. So if you are a CSS expert but maybe don't have time or aren't interested in learning how to create a pull request, if you just want to read some code, if you're on a plane or something like that, you can check out a Backdrop and kind of do a review of all of our CSS. That would be really helpful. Same thing goes for our HTML. We created a bunch of new markup for our layouts. It would be great if we could have a front-end expert kind of take a look at that and let us know if we have too many divs or if there's anything else in there that needs to be cleaned up. Usually every week during our weekly meeting for Backdrop CMS, we have a section where we have updates from the project management committee. So in the last week or two, I guess, Nate and I tried to figure out what Backdrop's mission statement should be. This is something that came from us trying to figure out who we are, what we're trying to tell people, what it is to be Backdrop. And we realized that Drupal's mission statement isn't real great. We watched a talk Emma Jane gave about the danger of having no why. We realized we didn't have a mission statement. We needed to figure out what our mission statement was going to be to help us kind of figure out how to ground ourselves. And we came up with something that I think is pretty good. It's definitely a lot better than Drupal's. It's definitely not as good as WordPress's. But I think it's a really great starting point for us right now. So our mission statement is enabling people to build highly customized websites affordably through collaboration and open source software. Yay! So it took us a while to come up with that. I think it's a pretty good start. It's got most of the stuff that's important to us. Like the point of Backdrop is to enable people. I think that's super important. It's not to enable businesses or to enable, I don't know, ponies. But it also has our affordably in there, which is super important to us to make sure that we can keep the cost of this thing down, even though the software itself is free. Being able to keep those websites affordable is also super important. And then, of course, collaboration and open source. We come from a world of Drupal where those things are super important. It's important to get that into our message as well. And, of course, websites, because that's what you build. So, I don't know. I think it's great. I'm really happy with it. I think we could improve it a little bit, but it's a great starting place. So I think we put that on our website. We put it on our philosophy page. I'm really happy we figured it out. So speaking of our website, there's other stuff we need to work on too here in Backdrop land. I think if we're going to push the release of 1.0.0 until January 15th, that buys us a little bit more time to work on getting some marketing materials ready so that we can kind of have a new homepage of our website, or at least some new content that helps tell people why they care about Backdrop, what it's going to do for them. And we've started drafting some of this content. We've gotten it handed off to a designer. It's going to help us figure out how to actually convey our message on our new site. So I think we're underway with all of that. I'm not sure we're going to be able to have all of it done by the time we release, but I think getting at least our content on the home page or on an about page or a why Backdrop page is going to be super valuable. So I'm excited that we're working on that as well. In addition to our website, there's some other things that we're working on too. We've got an API site. This is going to document not only all of our code, but also all of the change records that are necessary, changes that have happened to Backdrop since we've worked from Drupal. I know Luke has done a ton of work on creating all of these change notices. We've got Doc in the GitHub queue is asking about how he can start working on them as well. So I think we're in pretty good shape. We need to have maybe we could have Doc Wilmot review some of the stuff, Luke, you've already done. That might be a good place for him to jump in and help make sure that we've got code samples for before and after, all of that good stuff too. I spent some time working on the Backdrop site yesterday. I'm trying to figure out how to get syntax highlighting and some other handy stuff going on there too, so that it'll look a little nicer for people who are going to read it. But eventually we'll get a new theme on it, and the whole thing will be much better. Other things we're working on, we've got an update server that needs some love. I think short term what we're going to do is just build a placeholder server so that people's websites can ping it and it won't say anything back. But at least they won't be pinging Drupal.org. I think that's what they're doing right now. So that's probably a release blocker, is getting at least something up so that we can not bother Drupal with our own update status checking. And then we also would like to create an official GitHub service, and this is so that anyone who's creating a Backdrop module or a theme can check a box on GitHub, and that module or theme will then be registered as specifically for Backdrop. And the backdropcms.org primary website can then go and check GitHub and say, hey, give me a list of all of the modules or themes that are created for Backdrop. It can aggregate them all together. We can build a fancy search tool and use that to build our modules and themes and layouts section on the Backdrop website so people can browse there. They can get more information about each project and direct links to download or install things from there as well. So I think that's all the stuff we're working on that's not Backdrop. If anyone wants to help us work on any of that, we have sprints every Thursday virtually after this meeting. Actually, Nate and I are here before this meeting too, but if you can only get so many hours a week from your job after this meeting is great. So this meeting is at 1 p.m. California time. We usually start meeting 2 p.m. California time. If you're on the East Coast, that's like 5 p.m. It's kind of your end of your day already. So I don't know if you're interested in working long hours to get Backdrop done, but that's when we meet. We will try and figure out some more in-person times to meet coming up here in the near future too, but we don't have those on schedule yet since it's holiday season. Let's see. I think everybody knows about our dragon. For those of you who don't, we have a new mascot. It's a really cute dragon. His name is Drop. He's open source. He's for everyone to use for whatever they want. You can make fun of us with him, or you can, you know, do whatever you need. Create Backdrop products using our drag and drop And he's also bundled up on our press kit page on our website. So if you want our logo or our dragon or anything, you can grab that there. So he's super cute, and everyone should take a look at him, even if you aren't planning on using him for anything just yet. Maybe you'll see him, and then you have to use him on something. He's pretty adorable. I really like him. He's my home screen on my phone. All right, so is there anything we should talk about since we're all here? Or anything else anyone wants to bring up?
No, I think we're good. I think yeah, we're sitting really good. I think
Yay.
I think yeah, with CMI complete, layouts functionally complete, views and core, I mean those are the main three. We've got some progress kind of pushing along in views and core, finishing up views bulk operations. That's probably like one of the few areas where we're still trying to kind of be a little bit more feature complete before release. But I think our really only large holdup is, thanks to this outline here, I totally had forgotten about it, is the update server business. Like we just need to get a shim server responding, saying, you know, no new updates, and then later actually build out the update server. But I think that's, I mean, that's really our big one. Oh, I guess for other people that are looking to get involved, I had somebody ping me last night and start working on backdrop issues. The best thing to do right now, like I said, I mean, there's certain critical issues, but the best thing to do right now, if you're looking to get involved, is to look into the backdrop issue queue, and then filter by milestone and look for the 1.0.0 milestone. And there's about, I don't know, it looks like about 30 issues there that are things that are targeted for 1.0.0. And as we get close to release, we'll either start pushing those back into 1.1 or 1.0.1, or later even, like it might need to go into 2. But if you're looking for issues to tackle that are of super high importance, just look for issues that are in the 1.0.0 milestone, because that's what we're hoping to get complete for the initial release.
That's great.
Could we, or how about creating a meta issue for hot issues, just to, in case somebody wants to do that and doesn't happen to have, you know, heard that section of the meeting?
Yeah.
Start here.
You know, we don't have the ability to make sticky issues, and so eventually it will kind of go down to the bottom of the list anyway. But that's not a bad idea. I'll think about that and see if that makes sense. Some of these other metas, like we should close, because, you know, like
Yeah,
it
like
doesn't.
the late ones.
Yeah, or like the HTML5 for backdrop isn't a 1.0.0 release blocker. It's just kind of, I mean, and there's like 3 issues inside of it, and even then, like all 3 of them are optional. So,
We could put a little note on API site saying, you know, hey, you want to start here? Want to help?
yeah, that's not a bad idea either. As long as we take it down once 1.0.0 is out. Okay, well let's think about that. And I don't know, Jen, I don't know, how do you feel about more metas?
Um, I think it's fine as long as they're appropriately. Or I mean, I think what would be better is if we could find a way to organize everything using like GitHub tags, so that we don't have like issues describing issues. But if we could have like lists of issues, that's what we're trying to get. The only tool we have right now is just metas. But if we could find some way to create that with GitHub tags, I think that would be better. But I know we're kind of limited there.
Yeah, well, I mean the milestone list actually is kind of like a tag, you know, that it shows you what we're trying to do for 1.0.0.
Yeah, that might be a good place to start.
Yeah,
We can get a link to that too.
yeah, it's just a little bit weird trying to get there because of the way GitHub organizes things. Okay. Okay, well, good. I think we're all done. I just wanted to add that, as a possible place to jump in and get started for anybody that's looking and participating.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Well,
well,
if there's nothing else, we will see you in IRC. If you have any questions for us, if you're watching this later, you can surely tweet at us. Backdrop CMS is probably the best Twitter handle to get our attention. You can also, find us on IRC. Pound Backdrop is the channel, or the GitHub issue queue is probably the most active place to jump in if you have a specific question about an issue. So we will see you on the internet.
okay, thanks everybody.